to protect it. And so with that, today's conversation is a celebration of this work started by incredible Dr. Jane Goodall and continued by the National Geographic explorers today. So with that, a very warm welcome as I introduce my 5 National Geographic explorers and speakers today. Gab, Shin, Ore, Pablo, and Nicola. Please join me on the stage. Welcome, welcome. So one of the most exciting things about this journey and this conversation is this book that I'm holding in my hands, a journal that brings all these stories together. And I wanted to start off with you, Nicola, to tell us a little bit about what this journal is all about and the stories that collects, because that's how all of us here are woven together.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicola Sebastian. I'm a writer and a co-founder of Emerging Islands. Basically, we're an organization that connects ecology, art, and communities to really respond to and engage with these ecological crises that the whole world is facing. And so that's kind of, we put together Follow the Water, which is a publication that gathers photography stories, including the ones of the explorers here today, that explore and kind of trace the lives of the rivers and the seas and the waterlands, bodies of water around the world, but centers it from the perspective of the communities that live with it most intimately. These waterways, as beautiful as they are, most of them are dying, if not already dead. And so it's super important to hold space for these bodies of water. And we think that the only way to really do that, to get to a deeper, kind of more complete picture of these waterways, is to center the struggles, the stories, and of course the knowledge, the wisdom of these communities that live with the water. So it's been, it's kind of been this collective journey of remembering the waters that sustain us, but also listening to each other, and that's been a beautiful but challenging process as well. And I just want to thank each of you for joining us on this journey, for trusting us to try to connect in these ways that are not so usual or so normal, business as normal. So thank you all, and I hope we can get deeper into the stories. Please tell us about your stories and the process in shaping them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what your opening of what the journal is all about gets me very curious to hear more on the individuals behind the stories. So I'd love to hear from you, Shin, kicking us off, of your personal story and perhaps the project you contributed back to the journal.
Right. Okay. Hi. สวัสดีครับ Shin ครับ Sirachai Arunatichai. I'm from Thailand. By background, I was trained in marine biology, so I did and still do shark research. But for my main work that pays the bill is for journalism. And well, I do all sorts of different things like politics, conflict, climate change. But my specialization, or what you may call like passion, is in marine conservation stories. And about my project here on this journal is on the one on the far left is the ghost weir. Is about Li, a traditional fishing method in Khon's Falls, the largest cascading waterfalls in the Mekong in southern Laos. So Li has been severely affected by the series of dam construction along up the river, and they has been illegalized by the authorities due to the conflict in that communities. So this has been forcing the fishers to leave their home, their families, seeking job as migrant worker elsewhere, and many of them are end up in Thailand. Yeah, so it's a dying way of life, and it's a similar situation to the decline of fish stock in the Mekong River because of the habitat destruction down along the river, and affecting the largest inland fisheries in the world, which is like the lower Mekong River basin. But ghost weir is just a part of my whole larger project, Last Cash, which I look into the traditional fishing cultures across Asia, and many of these cultures are centuries or millennia old, but most of them are like rapidly declining due to many reasons: overfishing from industrial fishing, climate change, pollution. But what they are so often overlooked by the policymakers, and I think that that is the issues.
Yeah.
And what is called, I'm trying to pay some puns, the cash, is that there are not just the cultural relic of the old past, but they are the living model of how we as humans once coexist with our local waters. So before they truly vanish, I want us to look at them, view them, learn from them, and ask that question: what we might lose, what can we still save, and whether can we rebuild that connection with nature again. So that's about it, my project. Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful connection also to what we'll touch on later on the indigenous angle of your work. But I would like to switch to Ore now, as the Mekong is something you have in common as well. Tell us about yourself and the project that you contributed to the journal.
Hi everyone, thanks for being here with us. My name is Ore. I'm a documentary photographer from Singapore, and my practice revolves around storytelling. And in my work, I find myself drawn to narratives of people and places affected by development, like the one that's being featured in the journal. So the work is called Mekong, Mother of Rivers. And actually, I photographed the same community that Shin did for his project. But of course, our stories are very different because we approach it from different perspectives. So for me, I'm looking at the symbolism of the Mekong as a mother to the communities who live around it, exploring the connection that they have with the river, and also how their lives are being affected by changes such as dams, climate change, and overfishing. And during my first trip for this project, I came upon this scene, which is the photo on my right. So this is the Sayaburi Dam in Laos, and what's happening here is that during the construction, they actually changed the course of the river so that they can build the dam in the middle of it. And then once it's being built, they will revert the course back again. And for me, that was completely mind-blowing because it's like, I didn't know they can do this to the river. And it's like they're breaking it apart and then putting it back again. So it's quite heartbreaking to see.
Yeah.
So later, I traveled by boat along a section of the river that would become the reservoir for the dam. And then I met villagers who bathed, who farmed, and who fished in the river. But their lives would be changed completely once the dam is built because their villages would be flooded. So, and often in this process, they have no say at all. So it's this imbalance of power that first drew me to tell their stories. But as I dig deeper, I realized that their stories are not just about loss. It's also about memories and the resilience that they have as they quietly adapt to this huge upheaval in their lives. So this is what my work is trying to communicate.
And how special to look at one body of water and have two stories coming out differently. And thank you, Shin and Ore, for sharing. Gab, I'm switching the space a little bit to hear from Gen Z. I'm curious, bringing us to the Philippines, tell us about yourself and the work you did.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Gab and I'm from the Philippines, and water for us actually, living in an archipelago of 7,600 plus islands, water is something that is very intuitive for us. It's something that we really embody amidst our coastlines, our marshes, our swamps. My mother and my grandmother actually came from a wetland called Hagonoy in Bulacan, which is north from where I live in Manila. And they moved out of that place actually in the 80s because of the rising floods. And you would see a lot of publications and news about this specific place where my mother grew up. And I think this, story has really shaped a lot of the storytelling that I do and the practice that I do as a photographer and as an artist. And, water is something that is in our spirit. It's in our ancestry. It's in our culture. And one of the people actually that I feel really embody this in our local knowledge is the Agusan marshlands. So it's the largest inland wetland in the southern region in the Philippines, and a tribe called the Agusanon Manobo who live and coexist with the water, and they are the guardians of the marsh who have coexisted with the wetlands, the peat swamp forests, the meandering rivers for almost a millennia. And Ate Marites Babanto here, who is at the center of the stage, is one of the tribal chieftain, and they're called the Bae. And their tribe is actually called Agusan because it comes from the word agos, which is to flow, to be with water, to go with the current. And this is something that they truly embody by protecting the marsh amidst climate change, the drought, super typhoons. And one thing that's interesting is actually they adapt and live with water. So they're not afraid of the floods because their houses are built on this floating structures that would rise and fall depending on the season. So, like, even their architecture, their way of life, their way of being is really connected and intertwined with water. And that's what I really wanted to share with the journal, that the frontline communities, the cultures that we have locally is something that we often overlook, but are actually the solutions amid climate change and amid the cultural crisis that we're facing.
Yes, I'm a dear friend of yours, and every time I also look at the work, I see the passion coming through the photographs and the stories that you share on stage with the communities. And Pablo, coming from a total different part of the world again, we're really traveling to different communities, different bodies of water. I'm curious to learn more about your story.
First, thank you for giving me the chance to share the stories here. My name is Pablo Alvarenga. I'm a documentary photographer and visual storyteller. I contributed to this journal with a project called Memories of the River, which is a collective project done with photographers Sol Sousa and Mariana Grave. In 2026, the Brazilian government built what was at that time the world's largest hydroelectric dam again in Brazil. This dam completely changed this area in the Amazon rainforest. It was built over the Xingu River, which is one of the most iconic rivers in the Amazon, which is home to countless communities and species. And 20,000 people were removed from their place, were displaced because of this. For those who weren't displaced, this means they end up living in a place where they didn't know what's going to happen. Like, in just one single day, they could face severe droughts or severe floods. The river was completely changed. This situation, I want you to think for a moment on how photography has been contributing to preserving our memories, right? Now think of a place like this, where photography is rare. That territory, it's a tapestry of memories. And now those memories are 20 meters underwater. So this story is so impactful that it has been told in many different times, but always through the same perspective, which is overwhelming numbers. And when that happens, the stories lose their names, the stories lose their voices, and the stories lose their owners, right? So this basically forced us to think in a collaborative work, which is what we end up doing. We embarked on a journey to rescue memories from oblivion in this place, and in some way keep this river alive through these memories.
It's really fascinating, this approach that you've taken. I love the language of rescue memories. I mean, what a dream does that bring to life? But it must be a lot of responsibility and also really challenging to work with new communities, new stories, when the memories aren't yours to begin with. So what were some of those challenges and how did you navigate?
I think it's challenging to speak about these kind of very personal stories with our voice, right? So we were debating on how to tackle this challenge, and we end up taking these people to the places where these memories took place. We have some very touching and very, I would say, the most beautiful interviews I've ever had were for this project. And we took these people to where these memories took place, which was actually very difficult because the landscape was completely changed, right? And there we shoot these pictures, like recreating these memories. And then we got a printer, we printed the